It's that time of the year again, tax time. Many of you will be getting 1099s from TSP, and particularly for you law enforcement, they may be incorrect. So how do we deal with them? Stick around, I'll show you. Welcome back to the channel, Furzonians. I'm Chris Barfield, barfieldfinancial.com. I'm a CPA, FURS expert, and on this episode, I wear a hat. Today, we're going to be talking about 1099Rs that you get from TSP. You've taken some money out of TSP. You are taxed on that, obviously. So you'll get a 1099R from them. Some of you have gotten these already because I know that because I've been getting emails about them. They are incorrect sometimes, particularly for law enforcement. I'm going to show you exactly what the issue is and how to correct it. Here is a 1099. Now this one's from last year that someone sent me. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. It works exactly the same. I've redacted it. Hopefully I've gotten everything off of this. Sorry for the scan. When people send me stuff, sometimes it's scanned a little bit, not super clear. But here's what we're talking about. On box number 7 here, you'll see a distribution code. Now this person took out $10,000 from their TSP. You'll see that the TSP automatically withholds 20%. So that's the $2,000 there federal. Do they have state tax? Looks like they have a state where they will owe state tax. TSP never withholds state tax. So that's why you see that blank there. Distribution code here. This is the correct code, 2. What we're looking for is 2. That is correct. Many of you, if it's incorrect, will have a 1. Let me go and explain what those mean. On the back of the 1099, if you turn it over, you'll see a list of codes. This is what box 7 could have in it. 1 through 9, and then there's a bunch of different letters, all kinds of things. What we're concerned about is 1 or 2. Let me blow this up a little bit. 1 is early distribution, and here's the problem. No known exception in most cases under 59.5. So remember, if you pull money typically from retirement accounts prior to 59.5, then you have to pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty. That's pretty standard, whether you're talking about a 401k, an IRA, or whatever. There are exceptions to that, and that's part of what these codes are. But the general rule is withdrawing before you reach 59.5, you have to pay a 10% penalty. There are exceptions inside the TSP. If you go through my retirement seminars, we talk about this extensively. But basically, if you are regular FURS and you separate from the government in the year you turn 55 or later, then you are exempted, or there is an exception for you for that 10% penalty. For law enforcement, the rules are different. It's basically any time you retire under the FURS law enforcement rules. So if you've reached 50 years old and you've got 20 years of law enforcement time and you retire, then the 10% penalty doesn't apply to you. Or if you've done 25 years in law enforcement, then it doesn't matter what age you are. You could retire at 47, let's say. You'd be exempted from the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So what we're looking to see here, what you would like to have is 2, meaning it's an early distribution, aka before 59.5, but an exception applies. That would be code 2. So that's the ideal thing. In this person's situation, they got the correct code, number 2. Many of you may see the incorrect code, 1. So what that means is, when I say it's incorrect, you know for a fact that you fall under this exception, but TSP, for whatever reason, did not give you that, code it like that. So they are indicating that you owe the 10%. The important thing to remember is it doesn't really matter what TSP coded it as. If you know that you meet the law requirements for the exception, then you don't have to pay the 10% penalty. So don't think that just because TSP coded it incorrectly that now you're stuck and you have to pay the 10%. It just means that there is some sort of error on their side that they don't have you coded correctly. That doesn't mean that you have to pay the 10% early withdrawal penalty. There are a couple of methods to correct this. So how do we do that? Well, number one is contact TSP. By contacting TSP, you can explain your situation. Let's say that you're law enforcement, for example, and you say, look, you guys sent me this. It's coded as 1, but I really am law enforcement. Take a look at that. Make sure that I'm coded as law enforcement. Send me a different one that is code 2. That is the simplest ideal solution to this if it works. However, there is a problem sometimes on TSP's end. I know, go figure, right? There's a problem with TSP's record keeping. The problem can be that you are not coded correctly in the TSP system as law enforcement. And if you're not coded as law enforcement, then the cascading effect is that when they issue the 1099, they don't see you as law enforcement, so they don't apply the exception to the code. There is a page on the TSP website that explains this, what is supposed to happen. I won't go into great details with it, but what's supposed to happen is that your agency is supposed to send over notification when you retire that you are what is called a code P. The payroll office must submit an employee 06 data record containing the new P employment. So that goes to public safety, and that if they have done that correctly and if TSP has processed it correctly, you should be in the system as public safety or law enforcement and exempt from the 10%, which means it should automatically be coded as 2. So if this was done incorrectly, either by your agency or by TSP, then you're probably going to get an incorrect code. You can ask TSP to fix it. Maybe they will, because maybe your agency submitted everything correctly, but TSP just didn't process it correctly. If that's the case, I know in many, many instances, hundreds of instances where TSP reissued the 1099-R and put the 2 in the box, the correct code. So if they done that, then boom, you're done. Attach that to your tax return. Well, actually, you don't have to attach it, but just have that with your tax records, and you don't have to worry about filing any additional forms to get out of the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So if that works out, great, you're done. You don't have to do anything else. What if it doesn't work out? Maybe you call TSP and they say, nope, your agency didn't submit the appropriate forms. We don't have you coded as public safety. Contact your agency. You contact your agency. That may go one of 2 different ways. They may be like, oh yeah, we made a mistake. We'll send it over and correct it permanently, and then you're good to go. Or you may get into some type of argument with them, or you just may not get anywhere. The agency may not send the documents over or be willing to do that. Or may tell you that you don't qualify for some reason. I don't know. Don't get into a huge, long, drawn-out argument with that. There is another way to do that. There is a specific form that the IRS has where you can fill it out and attach it to your tax return every year that will get you out of paying the 10% early withdrawal penalty if you are genuinely not supposed to pay it. It doesn't just get you out of it if you owe it. If you're genuinely not supposed to pay it, you're exempt from it, then the IRS has a form that you can attach to your tax return to make sure that you don't have to pay it. And that form is IRS 5329. This can be a daunting form when you first look at it. And I'm not your CPA. I'm not going to be giving you tax advice. Remember that. But there's a lot to look at on this form. What you're concerned about is part 1. You're going to list on line 1 how much money you took from TSP and your distributions. And then you are going to put on line 2 distributions on line 1 that are not subject to the additional tax. And that would be, assuming you're not subject to that additional 10% early withdrawal penalty, then it would be all of your withdrawals would be exempt from that. So you would enter all of that in here, whatever the amount is on number 1. Next, you'll see, in addition to line 2, the amounts, they're going to ask you to put the appropriate exemption number from the instructions. Okay, so what do the instructions say? Let's go over to the instructions. Line 2, exemptions to the additional tax on early distributions. Number 1 is the one we're looking for. We don't have to read through all of these different ones. Qualified retirement plan distributions you received after separation from service in or after the year you reach age 55. Already talked about that. Or age 50 or 25 for public safety, or 25 years under the plan, whichever is earlier. So those exemptions that I just stated earlier, which you guys already know, most of you know that. This is number 1. You fall under this exemption. You would put that on line 2 right here. You would put 1. And then that alleviates what you're doing basically is notifying the IRS that, yes, I got a 1099. Yes, it says that I don't qualify, but I'm filling out this form and I'm showing you that I do qualify for the exception. And why do I qualify? Because if you're law enforcement, then you've satisfied that exception rule right there, which is number 1 under the instructions for 5329. Okay, so there's 2 ways to do it. You can fix it with TSP by asking them to code it correctly, and hopefully you are in their system like that as a P. If they cannot do that or will not do it, then you can fill out a form 5329 that overrides the code that they claim that you are under. This is very common. Many of you have read Dan Jamison's book, The First Guide. Dan has been withdrawing from TSP and has filled out one of these forms, I think, every year that he was under 59 and a half, just because the TSP never got it right. So it's not the end of the world. Don't panic when you get your form from TSP, your 1099. It doesn't mean that you automatically now owe the 10%. It's just that something is not coded correctly. There's a clerical error, whatever. You can fix it. For those of you that want to dig a little bit deeper into this, or hopefully your CPA would know about this, but if you are using a CPA and they're not sure what you're talking about, either way, you guys can go to my website. I have an article from last year. This comes up every year. So March 5th of 2024. What if TSP screws up my 1099-R? I go through basically everything that I just went through in this video, including some screenshots, including a little more detail in exactly what's going on, as well as some links. I tell you exactly how to fill out the form 5329, etc. And there also are a few examples down here I noticed today as I was looking at this of some people that struggled with this or had this same issue. I'll put some of these links in the notes below so you guys can have links to some of this stuff. Hopefully that helps. As always, the best course of action is to have a CPA handle this stuff for you. Taxes are really not the time to do it yourself. You could save a couple $100 in tax preparation and cause yourself a couple $1,000s worth of problems with the IRS and headaches. So really what you should be doing is reaching out to a CPA to get this stuff taken care of. But that gives you some basis of knowledge to discuss with them, and hopefully it helps. I've got other videos related to tax issues because it's that time of the year and you guys will be getting your documents here pretty soon. By the way, if you're retired already, your 1099-Rs from OPM are currently in your OPM services account. You can download those. All right, thanks for watching. If you got one of these 1099s that's incorrect, or you know of somebody that got one, don't panic. Tell them not to panic. Share the video with them. You'll be able to recover from it. It's not that big of a deal. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya. Feed that TSP.